women of East London feel horror at the dreadful sins that have been lately committed in our midst, and grief because of the shame that has fallen on our neighbourhood. We have learnt much of the lives of those of our sisters who have lost a firm hold on goodness and who are living sad and degraded lives. We would also beg that your Majesty will call on your servants in authority and bid them put the law which already exists in motion to close bad houses within whose walls such wickedness is done and men and women ruined in body and soul. We are, Madam, your loyal and humble servants.
There was a feeling that what happened to these women deserved to happen to them. The average Victorian regarded a prostitute as a gay woman. Now, they use the word gay not in this sense that we use it today as meaning homosexual. They use the word gay as meaning nymphomania. Prostitutes were all nymphomaniacs. That was why they were prostitutes. Therefore, they were on the streets for their pleasure. The fact that they were there out of sheer economic desperation and necessity is rarely considered. Therefore, they're on the streets for their pleasure. The wages of sin is death. And therefore, what happened to them? Deserved to happen. So why waste too much time over these women? It's another piece of street cleaning.
After the murder of Catherine Eddowes, women in the West End feared for their lives. The Ripper was both bloodthirsty and unpredictable.
This was someone who was killing individuals, but was clearly sending a message to society generally, so that everyone begins to perceive him as talking to them directly. And that's, again, that's the change that happens. Is when the killer suddenly realizes, I'm only killing one person at a time, but in a way I am assaulting society.
15,000 constables manned the streets. 1,500 undercover detectives prowl the docks in Covent Garden, including a director of the Bank of England, who disguised himself as a common labourer. Out of necessity, the sneaker was invented.
In common with hundreds of others, I was drafted there and we patrolled the streets, usually in pairs, without tangible result. We did, however, rather anticipate a great commercial invention. To our clumsy regulation boots, we nailed strips of rubber, and so ensured some measure of silence when walking.
Unfortunately, the inquiry was under two separate directions. The city police, with their involvement with Catherine Eddowes' murder, the one canonical murder that took place in the city, held a separate investigation, and although the two forces were supposed to liaise, and did liaise quite well at ground level, the chiefs didn't get on, and the chiefs did not properly exchange information.
Soon, citizens took matters into their own hands.
We know that the vigilante groups arrested people on the streets. We get accounts of people being taken to stations and obviously embarrassed police officers having to arrest sort of quite respectable gentlemen out on the street. Possibly, too, they released the Ripper on occasion. It's speculation, but nonetheless, it is something to be considered.
George Lusk, head of the Whitechapel Vigilante Committee, received a letter posted from hell, probably from the real killer. The syntax was clearly Irish, and the envelope contained parts of a human kidney.
Mr. Lusk, sir, I send you half a kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you. T'other piece I fried and ate it, was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out, if you'll only wait a while longer. Catch me when you can, Mr. Lusk.
32-year-old Irish-born socialist and critic George Bernard Shaw wrote one of his famous letters to the press. Less than a year ago, the West End was literally clamouring for the blood of the people hounding Sir Charles Warren to thrash and muzzle the scum who dared to complain that they were starving, behaving, in short, as the property class always does behave when the workers throw it into a frenzy of terror by venturing to show their teeth. Whilst conventional Democrats were wasting our time on education, agitation, and organization, some independent genius has taken the matter in hand. A murdering fiend called Jack the Ripper had killed 4 women. How many more would die before he was through?
It escalates. It constantly escalates. And we see this more clearly probably in the Ripper case than in anything else. The constant escalation of mutilation.
You've got the murderer. He's now working to some timetable of his own. It goes like this. 31st of August, he kills Polly Nichols. 8th of September, he kills Annie Chapman. 30th of September is the double event. He kills Stride and Eddowes. 8th of October, nothing happens. 30th of October, nothing happens. The night of the 8th, 9th of November, he meets his 5th and final victim. And this is this young prostitute called Mary Kelly. On the night of the 8th, 9th of November, it's raining, she's out on the street, she's looking for customers. She picks one up around about midnight, takes him back to her room, and one of the other prostitutes sees her drawing the curtains of her room, and as she did so, Kelly is singing a musical song. It was only a violet I plucked from my mother's grave. Around about 3:30 in the morning, she picks up the Ripper. Some people living in Miller's Court hear a faint cry of murder. It's almost certain that it was at that point that the Ripper, lying on the bed beside Mary Kelly, throws the sheet over her head and makes his first thrust through the sheet with a knife. He has several hours to work over.
She had been absolutely savagely mutilated, almost cut to pieces, her abdomen entirely emptied and the contents left scattered around on the bed beside her. Pieces of flesh had been left on a table beside the bed. Her heart had been extracted from her thorax, and it is possible, from the way the doctor described this, that that was taken away.
There is the photograph of the murder. She's lying on the bed facing the window. You can just see the puff sleeves of her chemise. This is what confronts the police when they get there to begin the investigation.
News of Mary Kelly's savage death stunned the world.
Eine furchtbare Morde in London in Whitechapel. Das ganze Stadt.
5 femmes mutilées.
Nothing in the history of American crime can, for special horror, be said to outmatch East End butchery.
The horrendous murder of Mary Kelly alarmed Buckingham Palace and greatly distressed Queen Victoria. She promptly telegraphed her Prime Minister with an urgent message. This new, most ghastly murder shows the absolute necessity for some very decided action. All the courts must be lit and our detectives improved. Sir Charles Warren, the beleaguered head of Scotland Yard, was already on his way out. The 5th Ripper murder sealed his fate, and he resigned.
That must have been another great high for him. I did all this. I caused this sensation. It's my doing. And again, it feeds the vanity and the arrogance.
12th of November, 1888. My name is Joseph Barnett. I reside at 20...
Mary Kelly's lover, Joseph Barnett, was summoned by the coroner to identify what was left of her decimated body.
I have lived with the deceased 1 year and 8 months. Her name was Marie Jeanette Kelly. I have seen the body. I identify her by the ear and the eyes.
Now, the Ripper had killed 5 women in ever-increasing acts of violence. Scotland Yard and the city police kept extra forces on the street and continued to search for the Phantom of Death.
The police at the time were hampered. They were hampered by the fact that they had no experience of sexual serial murders. They had no files to look at. They had no reliable consultants who could come along and say, it'll be a man like this, look for this sort of man. They therefore were looking